So in today's video, I'm going to talk about classes in Python. And classes are basically, a data structure that allows you to kind of encapsulate multiple variables and functions that operate on those variables in kind of in a convenient programming template. So probably the best way to do this is just to show you an example. And I'm going to do a simple bank account example using a class. So we're going to define a class. Let me come over here. Class, and we're going to call it bank account. And within that class, we're going to have a function called init, and basically this is going to define kind of when we call bank account and assign variables, this is going to set up everyone or initialize the class, or in particular the object of that class. So with every function, we're going to take in self. This refers to the instance of the class. And then let's take in another variable, amount. And this is going to be the amount in the bank account. So we're just going to say self.amount is equal to amount. And so that's all we're going to do in our class right now. And so what we could do is say something like Chris is equal to bank account. And let's put $100 in it. And we can run it, make sure everything's good. And then if we want to take a look at print, we could do print Chris.amount, and we're going to have $100 in there. So that's going to be kind of the amount within kind of the object Chris, which is an instance of the bank account class, and that has $100 in it. But we could also define another account. So I'll use my wife's name, Hannah, and so maybe she has a bank account, and then maybe there's $500 in it, and so I can print Chris.account, and then let's do Hannah.amount. And so I have $100, and then Hannah has $500. So again, these are just different instances of this class or different objects. And within this, we can have lots of different variables. So we could also put in, say, maybe I'll come over here. We could also put in name, and so we have name, and maybe we'll just put this initially as empty quotes, and we could do self.name is equal to name. And so again, self here refers to, in the case of Chris, this is basically self refers to Chris, and then we're referring to Hannah, self refers to Hannah. And so we can also have multiple variables. So I could do something like here, Chris, and then I could do Hannah within this class. And then so we could also print Chris.name, and then we could also print Hannah.name. And so we have $100 for me, $100 for Hannah, and then our two names can also be included in kind of the class of bank account. Now we can do a lot more. So one of the first things is we probably don't want to look at the kind of the variables within the class. Like we don't want to do Chris.amount, Chris.name, and so on. And so what we can do is actually define something where maybe we just want to say simply like print.Chris, right? And right now, print.Chris just tells me that I have a bank account object, right? That's what it is. And so what we can do, what's one of the cool things of classes is we can basically overload operations. So print actually expects Chris to return a string, right? Because it has to print a string. So we could define what's known as a string. And here we're going to take self here. And maybe we could return, simply a string that would say, so we could do return, and maybe we'll do string that let me do self.amount. And so what this is going to do here is when I type Chris, when I print Chris, what it's going to do is look for, print's going to expect a string command, and then in the class I can define the string command. And the underscores, the two underscores are telling these are kind of built-in methods. And what we're going to do is just simply return the amount, and then we're just going to convert it to a string. The other way we could have done it is we could have done something like percentage. Let me kill this out. We could do percentage .2f, and then we could do something like Chris dot amount, or keep on, sorry, this self dot amount, and then we have $100, and we could also print Hannah, and then there's $500 there. We could get fancier. We could say percentage strings balance is, and we could also do something like self.name and self.amount. And so then if I run this, it'll say Chris's balance is $100 and Hannah's balance is $500. Again, we're using percentage S to replace kind of the string, right? So that's our name. And then the percentage 0.2F is the amount with 2 digits afterwards. So maybe we want to do some extra things. So maybe we want to have a deposit function. So we could define a method, and we can call it deposit. Note it doesn't have the underscores. These are typically, for built-in functions. So we just do deposit, comma, amount. And then what we could do is just say self.amount is plus equal to, let me make this a little bit clearer. I should probably call it a balance, but I could do deposit here as the variable is equal to the deposit amount. I'm going to call it deposit amount. And then deposit amount. And then likewise, I could take this and I could also do a withdraw function. And then I could do withdraw. And now we're just going to do minus equal to amount. And then let's just make this withdraw amount. And then withdraw amount there. So I run it, make sure everything's right. So then maybe I could say Chris.deposit. Maybe I have $1,000, and then I run it, and now I have $1,100, and maybe then Hannah does a withdraw, and maybe it's $200, and we can look at the different amounts. And then, maybe she also is going to deposit later. We can just put in $5. And so then we can have the different amounts going on, where here Chris has 1,100 because we deposited 1,000. So 1,000 plus 100 is 1,100. And then Hannah had 500, withdrew 200, and then deposited 5. And then we get 305. So you can actually make these classes fairly complicated. We'll do one in the next video, but the key thing is we need this init function, right? So this is going to define the class. Everything's always going to take in the self, right? So that refers to the object, right? So when we do the initialization, basically when we call this right here, it's going to run this function. It's going to take an amount as an input argument, and also the name as an input argument. Here I just initialized it. And then it's going to create the self object, and then we can do self.amount for all the different methods in it. And so that's kind of just a quick overview of classes, of a very simple class. So one last thing we can do is we can also define a global variable. And so maybe we can come up here and say assets are equal to, say, $1,000. And so what assets is basically, this is a variable that's unique to the class bank account, but we can operate it on all the different methods. So when we do a deposit, what I can say is bank account dot assets is plus equal to amount. And then likewise, I'll just come over here, and I'm going to adjust the assets for each one of these. So I'm going to do deposit amount, and then withdraw amount. Whoop, where's my error? Line 16, self amount. Oh, I forgot the deposit amount. Copy there, and I run it. And now I have basically the value. And what I could also do is something like print bank account assets And that's going to give me basically the total amount of all the different deposits, which in this case is just 1100 plus 305, which is 2405. If we had another account, so here's one of my dog's names, so maybe Patty has a bank account, and then Patty has 50 bucks in our bank account with Patty, and now this becomes 2455 because all of these different objects are operating on this variable assets within the class. It's probably not something you want to use, but it might be useful in some programming instances. The bigger thing is we can define variables and then have variables specific for the class, and then have functions that operate on those variables in such a way that it makes it easier so we don't have to get into these details, and we can just do simple functions like deposit, withdraw, and then we print out the values. We get the values that come back. And so once again, this is kind of a quick overview of a class. I'll qualify this by saying I'm not the best programmer using classes, so this kind of goes under object-oriented programming. And it's just something I don't normally do because most of the code I've written professionally for work is basically code that maybe I run or one of my students will run. And so we're not kind of generalizing and making a nice kind of structure in our code that classes provide, because it's only like one or two people running the code. But classes are really nice when you want to create like a library for other people to use. So, NumPy is kind of a classic example, which is a class. In the sample problems, I also posted one, at least a partial one for complex numbers, like if you want to do operations on complex numbers. And then in the video coming up, I'll do one on kind of a simple vector class. With that, I'll stop. If you have questions, please post them in the comment section or put them on Piazza. And hopefully this was clear. All right, thank you.